The cold was sharp enough to sting Owen Tucker's face as he rode through the narrow mountain pass. The December wind cried through the rocks like a wounded animal, biting through every layer of clothing he wore. His horse, a strong chestnut mare named Belle, pushed forward through the knee-deep snow. Each breath she released turned into thick white mist that faded into the freezing Montana air. The year was 1887, and winter had arrived early in this isolated part of the Montana Territory. Owen was 28, but life had aged him far beyond his years. He had been orphaned at 12, worked cattle drives from Texas to Kansas, broken horses in Colorado, and searched for gold in California. 3 years ago, he finally settled in a small area near Silver Creek, hoping to build a quiet life. He adjusted his worn gloves and pulled his scarf tighter around his neck. "Just a bit more, Belle. We'll reach Silver Creek before nightfall," he whispered, patting the horse's neck. Silver Creek was a tiny town tucked in a valley. Only about 200 people lived there, surviving the brutal winters with hope and hard work. Owen worked as a ranch hand for nearby ranches and sometimes guided travelers who didn't know the dangerous mountain paths. As the trail widened and dipped toward the valley, something caught Owen's attention. A horse stood alone near a fallen log, nibbling on a small patch of exposed grass. The horse was saddled, but there was no rider. Its reins were tangled in the bushes. "Whoa, Belle," Owen said, pulling his horse to a stop. He climbed down, his boots sinking into the snow, and walked slowly toward the lone horse. "Easy there," he said gently. This was no ordinary horse. It was a beautiful palomino with fine tack. Definitely not a horse from the local ranches. A small embroidered C was on the saddlebag. Owen looked around. There were no footprints, no signs of where the rider had gone. The snow from the night before had covered everything, but near the edge of the trail, something looked off. The snow was disturbed, uneven in one spot. Owen followed his gut. He stepped closer to the small ravine beside the trail. Snow had gathered deeply there, forming a smooth white blanket that hid everything underneath. "Hello?" Owen called out. His voice disappeared into the wind. "Anybody there?" No answer, just cold wind and silence. But something felt wrong. Owen dropped to his knees and began brushing the snow aside with his gloved hands. At first, it was only snow. He pushed faster. His heart beat harder. Then his fingers hit something soft, not rock or earth. Fabric, a coat. "Good Lord," he muttered as he dug faster, scooping snow away with both hands. Within moments, he uncovered a young woman. She was buried under the snow, her face pale, lips turning blue. But when Owen leaned close, he saw a small cloud of breath leave her mouth. She was alive. Barely, but alive. Her coat was dark blue with fur, the kind worn by wealthy travelers from the East. Her auburn hair was loose from what had once been a neat style. Her skin was cold and colorless, but there was beauty in her delicate features. Owen carefully pulled her free from the snow. She was light in his arms, frighteningly cold, like holding winter itself. He carried her back toward the horses. Belle stood waiting, and the palomino watched him as if expecting him to help. "Miss, can you hear me?" he asked, but she didn't respond. Owen lifted her onto Belle's saddle, climbing up behind her to keep her steady and warm. He tied the palomino's reins to his saddle. "Come on, Belle. As fast as you can," he urged. The trip to Silver Creek felt endless. Owen wrapped one arm around the young woman, trying to share his warmth. Her head rested against his chest, and he could feel how weak her breathing was. He wondered who she was and what had brought her to such a deadly trail alone. By the time the town lights appeared, the sky was darkening. Owen rode straight to the home of Doc Fletcher, the town's only doctor. "Doc!" Owen called out as he climbed down and lifted the woman into his arms. The door opened, and an older man with spectacles appeared. "Owen Tucker, what in the world?" "No time. Found her buried in the snow on Widow's Pass. She's alive but fading fast." Quote, "Bring her inside," Doc ordered. Inside, they placed her on a small examination table. Doc hurried to get blankets and supplies. Owen stood close, unable to step away. "How long was she out there?" Doc asked, removing the frozen coat from the young woman. "I don't know. Found her horse still saddled." "Must have been since last night," Owen answered. "It's a miracle she's breathing," Doc said, checking her pulse. "We have to warm her slowly. Too fast could kill her." Owen helped bring hot water and blankets. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the fear he had arrived too late. After a while, the doctor found a letter in her saddlebag. Her name was Prudence Carmichael, traveling from Boston to visit her aunt in Helena. But she had ended up 100 miles off course. "She won't be traveling anywhere for a long while," Doc said. "She'll need care and someone to stay with her tonight." "I'll stay," Owen said without thinking. Doc raised a brow but nodded. "If she wakes, give her a spoon of this medicine. Keep the fire going." Hours passed. Owen sat beside her, watching the fire and listening to her faint breathing. He couldn't explain why he felt the need to stay. She was a stranger, but something inside him refused to leave. Near midnight she moved. A soft sound slipped from her lips. Her eyes slowly opened, revealing green eyes the color of spring grass. "Where?" she whispered. "You're safe," Owen said softly. "I found you on Widow's Pass. I'm Owen Tucker." She tried to speak again. "Prudence Carmichael. I know. You're in Silver Creek now. Just rest." Her eyes filled with confusion and fear for a moment, then softened as she looked at him. "You saved me," she whispered. Owen felt something shift in his chest. "Rest now. You're safe," he repeated. Her eyes closed again, but before sleep claimed her, she whispered one more thing. "Not anyone would have stopped." Owen sat back, staring at her peaceful face. Something about this woman called to him, and he didn't understand it yet, but he knew one thing. He would not let anything happen to her. He kept the fire burning, never once looking away from her as the winter wind howled outside, the same wind that had almost taken her life. Morning sunlight reflected off the snow outside Doc Fletcher's window, filling the small room with a soft glow. Owen had barely slept, but he didn't care. When Doc returned, Owen stood up, rubbing the tiredness from his eyes. "She woke once in the night," Owen said. "Had a little water. Knew her name." Doc checked Prudence with careful hands, listening to her breathing and feeling her pulse. "Color's better. She's a fighter, this one. She'll live thanks to you." Owen looked at her sleeping face and felt a quiet relief wash through him. A short while later, Prudence woke again, her eyes clearer than before. Doc introduced himself, and Owen helped her sit up. She winced but stayed steady with pillows at her back. "Miss Carmichael," Doc said kindly, "you're lucky to be alive. You'll need rest for a few days at least." Prudence glanced between them, trying to make sense of everything. "I was traveling to Helena. The stage left me at the last post. They said a guide would be there, but there wasn't." Her voice cracked. "I thought I could manage alone." Doc shook his head. "A dangerous choice in winter." Owen gently handed her a cup of warm broth. She took it with shaky hands, and her eyes met his over the rim of the cup. "Thank you for everything." Owen cleared his throat, trying to ignore the warmth her gaze caused inside him. "Just glad I happened by." When Doc suggested she stay at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house to recover, Owen offered to arrange it. He didn't know why he spoke so quickly, but he couldn't imagine her being alone. Outside, he hurried to make preparations. Mrs. Holloway, a kind widow, immediately began preparing her best room. "Poor child," she said as she worked, "buried in snow, so far from home. And from Boston, too. Heaven help her, this place must feel like the end of the world." Owen returned to Doc's house with her belongings. Prudence was awake and sitting by the window, looking out at the snow-covered street. She had changed into a simple but elegant dress. Though pale, she looked stronger. When she saw him, her face lit up with a soft smile. "Mr. Tucker," she said warmly. "You're back." "Just brought your things," he replied, placing them near her. "Mrs. Holloway's expecting you." Doc gave his approval, and Owen offered his arm to help her walk. Prudence hesitated only a second before accepting. Her hand slipped into his arm, small and soft. and for a strange moment it felt like it belonged there. They walked slowly toward the boarding house. Prudence stopped often, not just to rest, but to look around. The little town, the snow, the quiet. It was all so different from her world. "It's peaceful here," she whispered. "Some call it dull," Owen said. "Peace is never dull," she replied. Mrs. Holloway greeted them like family and fussed over Prudence, settling her into a warm room. As Owen placed her bags down, he almost wished he could stay longer. "Thank you, Mr. Tucker," Prudence said softly, "for everything you've done." Owen tipped his hat. "Rest well, Miss Carmichael," quote. But long after he left, her voice stayed with him. The next morning, Owen returned to town, telling himself it was only to check on her, but truthfully, he wanted to see her again. He found her sitting in the parlor, sunlight warming her face as she read a book. When she noticed him, her expression brightened with true happiness. "Mr. Tucker, how kind of you to visit." He sat across from her, hat in his hands. "Just making sure you're healing well." They talked, slowly at first, then easier as minutes turned to hours. They spoke about Montana, Boston, their childhoods, dreams, and fears. Owen learned she was educated, well-traveled, from a respected Boston family, and yet she felt trapped there. "People judge everything in Boston," she said quietly. "How you speak, what you wear, who you know. Out here, I feel like I can breathe." Owen nodded. He understood that more than she knew. Each day after that became a routine. Owen worked at the ranch in the mornings, then rode to Silver Creek to visit Prudence. She grew stronger, and soon they were taking short walks through town together. Folks noticed, and they talked. People in the saloon whispered the story everywhere he went. That cowboy found her buried under the snow. They say she was near frozen stiff. And he told them, "I'll dig till my heart stops." Quote, Owen hated how the story got bigger each time, but Prudence found it sweet. "You risked your life to save mine," she said one afternoon, looking up at him. "I don't think I will ever find the right words to thank you." "You don't need to," he replied. But something unspoken hung between them now, warm, bright, and dangerous. One day, as they walked down the snowy street, Prudence stopped. Snowflakes landed on her eyelashes, and the wind brushed loose strands of auburn hair against her face. "Owen," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." He turned toward her, heart beating faster than he liked to admit. But before she could speak, Mrs. Holloway stepped out of the general store with her arms full of parcels. "Oh, good, you two are here," she said cheerfully. "Be dears and help me carry these." The moment shattered. Whatever Prudence had been about to say faded away like breath on cold air. That evening, Owen returned to the ranch with a heavy heart. The closer she came to recovering, the closer he came to losing her. Her aunt had arranged a guide. Soon she would leave, return to her world of elegance and fine society. And he would stay here, in a world she would never belong to. But the next morning, everything changed. Owen was cleaning the stable when a stranger rode up, a guide from Helena. He handed Owen a sealed envelope. "She asked me to deliver this to you," the man said before riding off. Owen looked down at his name written in fine handwriting. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside, Prudence wrote to him with honesty and courage, pouring her heart into the page. She thanked him, spoke of what he meant to her, and confessed that she feared she had fallen in love with him. And she asked one thing. If he felt anything for her too, would he come to her before she left? Owen stared at her words, breath unsteady. The truth hit him harder than the winter wind ever could. He loved her. More than reason, more than fear, more than he knew was wise. He dropped everything and saddled Belle. Snow flew beneath her hooves as he rode toward Silver Creek as fast as the wind. Prudence was leaving in the morning. If he didn't speak now, he would lose her forever. Owen's heart pounded with every gallop of his horse. The winter air cut against his face, but he barely felt the cold. All he could think about was Prudence's letter, her words echoing in his mind. She felt something for him. something real, and she was leaving in the morning. When he reached Mrs. Holloway's boarding house, he jumped off Belle before she had fully stopped. Mrs. Holloway answered the door with a knowing smile, as if she had been expecting him. "She's in the back garden," she said softly. "Been looking toward the road all morning." Owen swallowed, nodded his thanks, and walked toward the small, snowy garden behind the house. The trees were bare and leafless, and a light snow had begun to fall again. Prudence stood near a wooden bench wrapped in a warm shawl. She turned when she heard his footsteps. The moment her eyes found his, her breath caught. "You came!" she whispered. "Of course I came," Owen said, stopping a few feet from her. His voice was rough with emotion. "After reading your letter, how could I not?" She looked uncertain, nervous. "Then, what did you think of what I wrote?" Owen stepped closer, snow crunching beneath his boots. "I think you're the most remarkable woman I've ever met. I think the days we spent together were the happiest I've known in years. And I think," he took a breath, "I love you too, Prudence. More than I should. More than makes any sense at all." Her eyes glistened with tears. "Then why do you say you shouldn't?" Owen gestured to himself. "Look at me. I'm a cowboy. I have no fine house, no rich name, no place in your world. I've got a small cabin at the ranch and a dream to own a bit of land, but dreams don't feed a family. I have nothing to offer a woman like you." Prudence's answer was steady and full of feeling. "A woman like me? You mean a woman who would have died in the snow if not for your strength and courage? A woman who never felt truly seen until you looked at her? A woman who has felt more alive here than in all her years in Boston?" She stepped forward, her voice softer. "You saved my life, Owen. But more than that, you awakened my heart." She took his hands in hers. "You are everything I never knew I needed, and everything that truly matters." Owen searched her eyes, needing to be sure. "If you chose this life, it wouldn't be easy. Winters are harsh. Work is hard. There's no comfort like the East. Are you sure?" Quote. "I don't need comfort," she whispered. "I need meaning. I need love. And I need you." The walls around Owen's heart crumbled. He pulled her close and kissed her, a warm kiss in the cold air, full of promise and truth. Prudence held on to him as if letting go would break her. When their kiss ended, she rested her forehead against his. "What do we do now?" Owen brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You should go to Helena as planned. Spend time with your aunt. She deserves that. And if, after that, you still want this, come back to Silver Creek, and we'll build a life together." Prudence smiled. "I will come back 1 month, not a day longer." They spent the rest of that day together, talking, planning, dreaming. It didn't matter how impossible it seemed. Hope lived between them now. The next morning came too soon. Owen helped her into the wagon that would take her to Helena. Snow fell gently as they stood facing each other, hands held tight. 1 month, Owen said, his voice low. 1 month, Prudence repeated. She leaned forward and kissed him softly. "And when I return, I will be yours." Owen watched the wagon roll away until it was only a blur against the white landscape. The moment it disappeared, he felt both empty and full. Empty without her, full of hope. Days passed slowly. Owen worked harder than ever, throwing himself into long hours on the ranch to keep his mind steady. In the evenings, he wrote her letters by lamplight, pouring out his days, his thoughts, his love. Each of her letters in return carried warmth through the winter cold. Her aunt had welcomed her, supported her choice, and even encouraged her return. A month later, Owen prepared for her arrival. The town had rallied around him. Everyone helped build a small but sturdy cabin on a piece of land Owen bought, a home meant for 2 hearts starting fresh. When the mail coach finally arrived, Owen stood waiting, hands shaking more than he cared to admit. Prudence stepped down, her eyes searching. "Owen," she breathed. He crossed the distance in seconds, lifting her into his arms as the town cheered around them. "You came back," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I told you I would," she answered with a smile. "I came home." Right there in the dusty street, Owen dropped to one knee and held her hand tightly. Prudence Carmichael, Will you marry me and make this your home for the rest of your days?" Her eyes filled again, but this time with joy. "Yes, Owen. Yes, I will." The town erupted in cheers. 2 weeks later, they married in Silver Creek's little church, surrounded by people who had helped save her life in one way or another. Their wedding night in their cabin was filled with tenderness, warmth, and love. In Owen's arms, Prudence knew she had chosen the right life, and Owen knew he would spend forever protecting her heart. Years passed, and their love only grew stronger. They worked side by side, built a family, raised children, and expanded their ranch. Every winter, when snow fell, Owen would look at Prudence and remember the moment he found her, the moment everything changed. And on their 10th anniversary, as they stood outside their home watching their children play, Owen wrapped an arm around her and whispered, "I would dig through 100 winters to find you again." Prudence looked at him with the same love she had the day she returned. "And I would choose you every time." Their story lived on in Silver Creek. Folks would whisper every winter, "She was buried in snow," and he said he'd dig till his heart stopped. And he did. Because love like theirs didn't fade, it only grew stronger with time.